Not too long ago, before the war in Ukraine turned into a full-blown crisis, Russia liked to brag about its military might. It carried itself like a heavyweight champion of the world, boasting that its technology could rival just about anyone, except maybe the United States. Its weapons were advertised as unstoppable, deadly machines that made enemies think twice. Countries around the globe lined up to buy them, pouring billions into Russia's pockets. But then came Ukraine, and suddenly that shiny reputation started to crack. In late September, something happened that left Russia red-faced. Ukraine managed to pull off a pair of strikes that didn't just sting, they completely flipped the story. Two Russian unbeatable defenses were taken out, proving that these so-called unstoppable weapons weren't as untouchable as Moscow wanted everyone to believe. Let's zoom in on one of those moments. We're heading to Crimea, a place Russia has clung to fiercely ever since it seized it in 2014. Protecting Crimea is a big deal for Moscow, and to guard it, they rolled out one of their crown jewels, the S-400 air defense system. If Russia's weapons were celebrities, the S-400 would be an A-lister. Advertised as the best of the best, it's supposed to spot almost anything in the sky, planes, drones, even missiles, and shoot them down before they can cause damage. On paper, it sounds unbeatable, but Ukraine just proved paper isn't the battlefield. Now, storming an S-400 head-on would be like charging a guard dog while waving a stake. It's just not smart. The system is packed with missiles ready to take down slow drones or incoming fire. Normally, you'd need to overwhelm it with dozens of drones and rockets, hoping some sneak through. But that's expensive, risky, and wasteful. Ukraine chose a smarter path. Instead of smashing the S-400 headfirst, they went for its weak spot, the radar. Think of the radar as the system's eyes. Without it, the S-400 is like a boxer swinging wildly in the dark, hoping to land a punch but never quite hitting the target. So on September 30th, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, known as the SSO, sent in a drone and took out the radar station tied to one of Russia's S-400s. Just like that, the all-seeing weapon couldn't see at all. It was blind. And here's the clever part. Ukraine didn't waste fleets of drones or risk losing valuable gear. One smart strike turned Russia's pride and joy into an expensive hunk of metal. Precision beat power. Brains beat brawn. Ukraine's SSO didn't stay quiet about it either. They were more than happy to share the news, letting the world know that Russia's most vaunted weapon had been knocked out in one clean hit. When Ukraine pulled off that September 30th strike, they didn't keep the victory to themselves. Instead, they jumped on Telegram to make it official. The Special Operations Forces, or SSO, announced that their units had successfully hit the radar station belonging to Russia's prized S-400 Triumph missile system. And here's where it gets a little poetic. The SSO couldn't resist pointing out the irony. Russia had built this billion-dollar defense machine specifically to shoot down drones, yet it was a drone that brought the whole thing crashing down. It's like building the world's biggest mousetrap and then losing to a mouse. The SSO reminded everyone why this mattered. The radar is the brain and eyes of the S-400. Take it away, and the rest of the system is just blind muscle. No matter how many missiles it carries, it can't fight what it can't see. Of course, Ukraine didn't share much else. No photos, no dramatic videos, nothing to pinpoint the exact spot where the radar had been taken out. And that's not by accident, it's strategy. By staying quiet, Ukraine forces Russia to guess. Where exactly did the strike happen? Was it one location or several? What might be coming next? But we do have a few clues. The Crimean Wind Channel on Telegram reported that subscribers in Crimea heard powerful explosions in the early morning hours of September 30th. They mentioned blasts in at least two districts, Leninsky and Feodosia. Were those the sounds of Ukraine's drones knocking out Russia's prized radar? Possibly. And if so, does that mean Ukraine hit more than one target that night? It's the kind of question Ukraine is happy to leave unanswered. What we don't need to guess about is why Ukraine is so determined to take out these S-400s. For Russia, the system isn't just another piece of hardware, it's a cornerstone of their air defense strategy. The S-400 is designed to track and destroy almost anything that comes through the sky. Drones, cruise missiles, aircraft, even ballistic missiles screaming down in their final seconds. And it's not just versatile, it's far-reaching. Some of its missiles can hit targets up to 400 kilometers away. That's about 250 miles. Others are shorter range, but the mix makes the S-400 a flexible, mobile defense tool Russia depends on to keep its occupied territory safe. Which is exactly why every time Ukraine knocks one out, it's more than just a tactical win. It's a crack in the armor Russia works so hard to polish. The S-400 isn't just one missile, it's a whole family of them. Russia can load it up with different types depending on what they want to hit. One option is the 48N6, which carries a massive warhead, over 300 pounds of high-explosive fragmentation designed to shred anything in its path. Then there's the 77N6, which is a little different. It doesn't just blow up, it's a hit-to-kill weapon, meant to smash directly into its target like a battering ram, moving at supersonic speed. For years, the S-400 was Russia's pride and joy. Until 2021, when the newer S-500 came along, it was their top air defense system. Some even called it Russia's answer to America's Patriot system, the same one Ukraine has been using with great success to fend off Russian missile attacks. But that comparison doesn't really hold up on the battlefield. The Patriot has outperformed the S-400 during this war, exposing the gap between flashy specs and real-world results. Still, on paper, the S-400 looks impressive. It's like a Lego set for the military, modular, scalable, and flexible. Each system comes with its radar, eyes, missile launchers, and an automated brain that can detect, track, and fire without needing a human hand guiding every step. A single S-400 unit can manage up to 40 launchers, and each launcher can hold 4 missiles. Do the math, and you're looking at 160 missiles ready to fire from just one system. Even scarier? Those radars can track up to 80 targets at the same time, assigning 2 missiles to each one. That means, in theory, an S-400 could handle a sky full of threats all at once. But here's the catch. If Ukraine wanted to overwhelm the system by sheer numbers, they'd need a drone swarm of at least 80. Anything less, and the S-400 could just swat them out of the sky before a single one got through. That's why the SSO didn't waste time or resources throwing wave after wave at it. They went straight for the radar, the single piece that made all of those launchers and missiles effective. Now, thanks to that one clever strike, Russia has up to 160 missiles sitting useless in their tubes. Missiles that were supposed to defend Crimea. Missiles that were supposed to prove Russia's dominance. Instead, they're just expensive fireworks waiting for orders they'll never receive. In short, Ukraine managed to cripple what was supposed to be an unstoppable defense system. And they did it with one well-aimed strike. Here's why Ukraine's first strike matters so much. The S-400 that was knocked out wasn't just anywhere. It was stationed in Crimea. And not just one. Crimea's northwestern coast is lined with several of these systems, almost like a row of steel shields. That alone tells you how much value Vladimir Putin places on holding on to Crimea. These aren't cheap toys either. Depending on who you ask, a single S-400 can cost anywhere from $200 million to over $1 billion. Even at the low end, you're talking about a system worth more than most countries spend on their entire military budgets. The price tag isn't just about hardware, it's about prestige. Russia poured that kind of money into Crimea because it sees the peninsula as a crown jewel, one it refuses to lose. But here's the twist. By concentrating so many S-400s in Crimea, Putin has created a dilemma for himself. Ukraine benefits no matter what. If it keeps hammering away at Crimea, it chips away at Russia's defenses and morale. If it turns its focus inside Russia, striking fuel depots, air bases, or supply hubs, then Moscow still bleeds. Either path forces Russia to spend energy and resources trying to patch holes faster than Ukraine can make them. Now, Putin may try to reassure himself that, even with air defense setbacks, Russia can still push forward in eastern Ukraine. Maybe he believes his offensive there is strong enough to cover for Crimea's weakness. But September 30th proved otherwise. That day wasn't just about one S-400 going dark in Crimea. There was another strike, one that hit a different nerve. This time, the action shifted north to Kharkiv, a region that's felt like it's been under siege since the very first days of the invasion. The date is worth remembering, September 30th. Ukraine had already shown back in late August and early September that it could dismantle Russia's prized assets. In just a few days, it destroyed 6 major pieces of Russian equipment in Crimea alone. Each strike whittled away at Moscow's confidence and showed the world that Russia's fortress Crimea wasn't as untouchable as it claimed. These attacks are part of a bigger picture that experts have started to notice. The Atlantic Council recently called it a slow and steady weakening of Russia's grip on Crimea. And that's exactly what's happening. Step by step, strike by strike, Ukraine is loosening the iron grip Moscow has tried to keep on the peninsula since 2014. But here's the thing. While the world's eyes are locked on Russia's offensives in the east and Ukraine's daring push into Kursk, a quieter battle is being waged further south. And it might be the one that really shapes what happens next. All through 2024, Ukraine has been steadily chipping away at Russia's grip on Crimea and the areas around it. Piece by piece, strike by strike, Ukraine has managed to hit more than a dozen high-value targets that play a direct role in Russia's war machine. We're talking about air bases, radar hubs, communication centers, and even multiple air defense systems that Moscow counted on to protect its southern flank. Then came September 30th, a day that delivered not one, but 2 major blows. Just hours after the SSO shredded an S-400 radar station in Crimea, Ukraine's Achilles drone regiment made its own mark. The unit, officially the 429th Separate Achilles Regiment, pulled off back-to-back drone strikes that took out not one, but 2 Russian TOS-1, a Soln-Sepyok multiple launch rocket systems, better known as MLRS. And this time, there was no need for speculation. Ukraine released the footage. The video, uploaded to YouTube by the Achilles Regiment itself, runs just under a minute, but it's packed with drama. The first clip shows grainy, shaky footage from the onboard camera of a first-person view FPV drone. At first, the target isn't clear, just shapes against a dark backdrop. Then the drone shifts slightly, and the outline becomes unmistakable, one of Russia's TOS-1A Soln-Sepyok systems, glowing like a silhouette in the night. The drone dives, accelerating toward its prize. Seconds later, impact. The feed cuts out in a burst of static. But the video isn't over. Another FPV drone's camera comes online, scanning the Kharkiv region from above. Within moments, it spots a second TOS-1A. This one is on the move, its crew trying desperately to reposition, but the lumbering vehicle isn't fast enough. The drone tilts forward, locks on, and plunges straight into the rocket system. Another strike, another explosion. On their own, FPV drone clips from Ukraine aren't rare. They surface almost daily, showing precision hits on Russian vehicles, tanks, or artillery. But this particular pair of strikes stood out. Why? Because of what Ukraine destroyed. The TOS-1A Soln-Sepyok isn't just another rocket launcher. It's a monster. Each one costs around $15 million, and inside Russia, it's treated almost like a legend. What makes it so feared isn't just the rockets it carries, but the type of warheads those rockets can deliver. The TOS-1A can fire thermobaric munitions, often called vacuum bombs. These aren't your standard shells or explosives. They are among the most destructive conventional weapons in Russia's entire arsenal. And now, thanks to 2 small drones and the pilots guiding them, Ukraine just erased 2 of these from the battlefield in a single day. To really understand why Ukraine's double strike mattered, we need to take a closer look at the TOS-1A, Soln-Sepyok, Russia's so-called heavy flamethrower. That nickname isn't an exaggeration. According to military analysts, the Soln-Sepyok isn't just a normal rocket launcher. Mounted on the chassis of a T-72 tank, it combines mobility with terrifying firepower. Its signature feature is the massive block launcher on its back, which can hold up to 24 thick, 220mm rocket tubes. With that setup, it can unleash a storm of rockets in rapid succession, saturating entire areas with fire and destruction. The vehicle runs with a three-person crew and can hit top speeds of about 60 kilometers per hour, around 37 miles per hour. With a range of over 500 kilometers, it's mobile enough to fire, relocate, and fire again, making it a flexible tool for Russian assaults. On paper, it looks like a nightmare machine designed to back up tanks and infantry with overwhelming barrages. If you've made it this far into the video, it means you're enjoying what we do here at Euro Bulletin. Take a second to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more updates and insights from Europe and its partners. Let's dive in more. But here's the twist. For all its terrifying potential, the Solntsepyok has some major weaknesses. Underneath that launcher, it's basically just a tank chassis with far less armor than an actual tank. That makes it vulnerable to the same weapons that have been chewing through Russia's armored vehicles since the war began. Anti-tank missiles, grenade launchers, and now, drones. And drones are a problem the Solntsepyok can't solve. If it tries to fire rockets at incoming drones, the chances of hitting one are next to zero. Worse, those rockets are extremely dangerous when Russian troops are nearby. Firing one in desperation risks wiping out your own side. Why? Because the Solntsepyok isn't firing ordinary rockets. It's firing thermobaric rockets, sometimes called vacuum bombs. That's where the flamethrower reputation comes from. Thermobaric weapons work in a horrifying way. First, they release a cloud of flammable material into the air. Then they ignite it, creating a massive fireball and an enormous shockwave. But it doesn't stop there. The explosion sucks up all the oxygen in the area, creating a vacuum. Anyone caught inside doesn't just face flames, they suffocate. The fireball gets you, or the lack of oxygen does. That's why these weapons are considered some of the most brutal conventional munitions ever built. They flatten structures, devastate fortified positions, and inflict terrifying casualties on anyone nearby. The Guardian and BBC both reported back in 2022 how quickly outrage spread when Russia started using them in Ukraine. Because these aren't just battlefield weapons, they're instruments of terror. And Russia loves using them. Which is exactly why Ukraine's destruction of 2 Solntsepyok launchers in a single day wasn't just another tactical win. It meant erasing 2 of Russia's deadliest, most infamous tools from the battlefield, and doing it with cheap, nimble drones. Back in March 2022, early in the invasion, Australian defense expert Dr. Marcus Hellier summed up something chilling about Russian tactics. When in doubt, Moscow is willing to destroy everything. Speaking to The Guardian, he warned that as Ukrainian soldiers and civilians dug in across cities, Russia would increasingly reach for its most devastating tools, including thermobaric weapons, in urban areas. Kharkiv is one of those cities. From the first days of the war, it has endured relentless bombardment. Families huddled in basements. Soldiers dug into ruined neighborhoods. So it's hardly a surprise that Russia positioned 2 TOS-1A Solntsepyok systems nearby. These were the very machines designed to unleash firestorms over cities like Kharkiv. But now, thanks to Ukraine's drones, neither launcher can fire another thermobaric rocket. That takes enormous pressure off Ukraine's defenders. Kharkiv remains a target, no matter what Moscow claims. Putin may have insisted back in May 2024 that Russia wasn't interested in capturing the city. He even told Politico that attacks there weren't about conquest, but about protecting Russia's border regions. But the evidence on the ground tells a different story. Russian strikes never stopped. In June, a wave of missiles, guided bombs, and drones killed at least 4 people in Kharkiv. Actions speak louder than carefully crafted excuses. Russia wants Kharkiv badly. The fact that 2 Solntsepyoks were sitting in the region tells us exactly what was planned for the city if Ukraine hadn't intervened. Thermobaric barrages don't just target soldiers, they shatter buildings, crush shelters, and turn neighborhoods into fire traps. With those launchers gone, the nightmare scenario for Kharkiv just got harder for Russia to carry out. And this wasn't the only blow Russia took. Remember, the very same day, Ukraine also crippled an S-400 air defense system in Crimea. That's one of Moscow's most expensive shields, knocked out with precision. Put the two together, the destruction of a billion-dollar defense system in Crimea and the elimination of 2 thermobaric rocket launchers near Kharkiv. And you see the scale of Ukraine's achievement. For Russia, It was a brutal couple of days. Putin's grip on Crimea slipped, and his plans for Kharkiv were dealt a heavy blow. For Ukraine, though, their drones had just pulled off the unthinkable, turning Russia's unstoppable weapons into smoking wreckage. These back-to-back Ukrainian strikes remind us of something vital. No weapon is truly unstoppable. What was once paraded as invincible can be outsmarted with creativity, persistence, and precision. In just a matter of hours, Ukraine flipped the script, crippling an S-400 in Crimea and silencing two Solntsepiok rocket systems in Kharkiv. But what comes next? Will Russia find new ways to shield its prized assets, or will Ukraine continue to expose cracks in Moscow's armor? How many more of these untouchable weapons are at risk of meeting the same fate? And perhaps the biggest question of all, could these strikes be shaping the turning point of the war? The battlefield is evolving day by day, and stories like these are just the beginning. If you want to follow every strike, every shift, and every surprise, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. We'll keep bringing you the latest.